Howdy and greetings. Welcome to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable podcast. Always a mouthful there. I'm your host once more for the month of March, Dorothy Lau, and I serve as the youth director at the Chinese Bible Church of Maryland in Rockville, Maryland of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan. With me today, once more again, two fantastic friends, colleagues, and pastors who support the work of the local and, dare I say, global Big C Church. Could you fellas please tell us more about yourselves? And a fun question is, what's a movie that always makes you cry?
Ooh, good one. I'm gonna go first, Terrence.
Wow.
Hey, everybody. My name is Justin. I am the president and CEO of the Dorothy and Terrence fan club.
There are no other members.
I am the president, vice president, and all the trustees. I am from Houston, Texas. And I've been working and advocating and studying and dreaming about student ministry since 2000.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
if you like to join our membership, it is $1 million a month. And so please Venmo me at your convenience.
Man, how do you follow that? All right. I'm Terrence J. I'm the family pastor at FCC Walnut. And we are here located in the land of the Luka Lakers. And so we're very happy and pleased. And hopefully by the time of this recording being released, we'll be far into the playoffs. In terms of a movie that I will always cry in, I don't have one that comes to mind right away, but I will tell you a movie that people usually don't think you're supposed to cry in that I did, and I do probably every time. And that is Cool Runnings.
Oh.
At the end, when they're crossing the finish line, tears come flowing out of my eyes. And so that would be my answer.
That's a good movie, though. I don't know about crying, but that's a good movie.
No, tears, not like heavy emotional
Tears
crying,
of joy.
Tears of soft, I think, just tears.
You're a true human, Terrence.
Wow, thank you. Can I join the fan club too? But you can remove my name.
I will give you a discount.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I forgot my movie, Dorothy. My movie is Life is Beautiful. The Italian movie about the Holocaust have you not seen it? Everyone,
but that is such a stark contrast.
You need to watch it. I mean, it's not like Cool Runnings, but it's about you just have to watch it and bring a bag. You need to bring like a Costco size tissue box. Like it's a tearjerker.
Yeah.
Dorothy, have you not seen it?
I don't know if I have.
Oh no, you either
get to it.
No, or you have not. Like
I probably haven't then. Or I have, but I've just forgotten. I've actually really enjoy watching World War II films and just digging into that history, but
this one's nuts.
Go for it.
I think they won like every single Oscar that year.
Yeah.
The Oscars actually matter. Just kidding.
Oh, deep cut in California.
Oh, dang it. Hey.
So yeah, anyways.
What about you? What's your movie?
My favorite movie, movie that always makes me cry. It used to, I guess, to be there's some differentiation. It used to be The Fox and the Hound, the Disney animated film, The Fox.
I was gonna say
because it's like a movie about animals, yes, but it's also like a microcosm of how racism occurs and how between animals, like you're not supposed to be friends because we're different breeds.
Interesting.
And just translating that to friendships and to the soul of a person versus the look of him. Another one also is the Freedom Writers, like writing Freedom Writers. That's with Hilary Swank. It's kind of based in the early 2000s, talking about the post Rodney King beating LA race riots and just the racial tensions that occurred in that time. And the power of high school students who were seen as nothing but future jail occupants to end up becoming very prolific communicators. They had a teacher who cared to invest in them. And I think that actually was a catalyst for me to consider going into youth ministry because of the impact that a person can have in wanting to shape the minds and the hearts and the characters of young people who are very moldable. So.
Just like John Candy in Cool Runnings.
Hate you, Justin. Maybe it's been so long since I've seen Cool Runnings, but
oh man, my fun employment is just it's a riot. I'm so good right now.
Anyways, okay. Well, thank you, listeners, for indulging us for these opening statements. But we are glad that you are with us and listening. And maybe by now, if you've been listening for a while, you get a little bit of our personalities. And we are actually just more goofy than we seem, because we too are people. But there are times that we decide to be pastoral. So that time should be now, friends. Okay. But our topic for this month, like I said in our last episode, is partnerships, and especially in the Asian American Youth Ministry context. In the previous episode, we explored what it's like for church youth ministries to link up and minister to and among its students together or its different ministries and localities. But this week, we dive into how youth ministries and their churches may strive for long-term missions partnerships. So, with that, let's establish some definitions, perhaps. And what is it that we mean, Justin and Terrence, when we're talking about being missional and forming partnerships? How about we can start with Terrence?
Well, I think being missional is just, really focusing on the fact that we're called to make disciples. And being missional would be going where disciples need to be made in a very intentional manner. So that could be in your home. Your closest relationships often are the ones we're called to be missional to. But then certainly as students are in schools, they have friend groups, they have various particular activities and people that they do stuff in the community. It's to be able to go out from their comfort zones with the gospel in hand, but also in their hearts to share with others. And then certainly that can go much farther than that. But then that would then tie into partnerships. Who do you work with to enable and facilitate, but then also to grow that desire in our students to make disciples?
Ooh, hey, Terrence, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Can you be missional as you game online?
absolutely.
Oh,
Totally, you can. Yeah, for sure. And I feel like with our students nowadays, and this is guys and girls too, let's not stereotype it and make it a guy thing. I feel like girls game just as much nowadays. I mean, the connections that they make in fighting, some video game war it's amazing. A lot of deep conversations go into those behind the scenes, and a lot of trust gets built. So for sure.
and I think if you're listening and you're in the ministry sphere, this was something for me that was pretty seismic in terms of definitions. When we're thinking about missional opportunities, it is that first part of Matthew 28 where it says, "As you go," right? And the question is, where do you go where there's other humans that need the gospel or need to be grown in the gospel? Which is literally everywhere, right? Whether it's a physical or a digital space. And I think that changes the whole game. Because I think historically, especially in a Chinese church, Asian church, when we're talking about missions, it was so broadly or so narrowly defined that we didn't think about missional living in schools or on the social media platforms and stuff like that. So there's no sphere in which the gospel can't reach, and we want to stay by that. So to add on to Terrence's definition, the missions events, though, those are probably the strategic events that you're planning for, that you're attending, that you're preparing for as well. Sometimes it could be spontaneous, but most of the time, I think historically in church settings, those are kind of your once a year, once a quarter type of events. And so, but I think I like what you said, Dorothy. I think to get the definitions correct matters. I mean, words and terms matter, especially in our field.
Yeah, for sure. I think that as I consider even our calendar and youth programming, quote unquote programming, that we certainly want to teach and help students to explore deeper biblical truth. And at the same time, we want them to be able to invite their friends. And so creating those spaces where we're not just going out, but also we're creating spaces where students can come in freely. It's not particularly being as intentional of going, but then our students are building those relationships with their classmates and with their teammates. And so where there can be the local effort, we do acknowledge how when youth ministries form their annual calendars, those are considerations that go into mind is how can we welcome, but also how can we go out? Terrence, it looks like you have a comment that you're itching to share.
No, I don't have an itching comment, but I'm enjoying what everything is being said out of you too.
Can Dorothy, can I go back to the thing you just said about
Mhm.
calendaring?
Mhm.
So the way, at least what I was thinking about in terms of the calendar year, I tried to do a lot of the building and equipping for our students
Mm.
in the fall, because that's when they first jump into the youth ministry. It's when they kind of
Mm.
get it's resettled. The orientations are typically August, September,
Mhm.
so that we have a greater emphasis of being missional in the spring specifically, right? Like hopefully they've already made the relationships in the fall, so that then we're training them inside in the student ministry, so that there's more intentionality in the spring and in the summer.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I thought through it. I don't know if it works. It seemed to have made a little bit of sense, but
With that,
Yeah, in general, I like the way that you process and kind of organize the school year, Justin. I feel like you're very intentional about it. We've talked in other episodes before about how you approach it. That's really cool. And so
well, yeah.
I'm kind of similar. So we do all of our planning and our commitments to certain opportunities in the fall, and in the spring is where we turn a corner into, publicity, recruitment, training, team building, and so on and so forth. So that if it's a summer event or a trip or something, then we'd be ready for that.
Yeah. And because I think what's hard is I don't know where the students are coming from after the summer, right? Because I think the assumption is, oh, everyone's going to be at the same place that I left them when they, at the end of the spring semester. But then I'm going, hey, I need a pretest almost, and I don't want to jump into a large scale project
Mhm.
early in the fall, because again, I don't know how much work I need to make up, or I don't know if everyone's on the same page, or if they reverted back. Like what if they went backwards over the summer months, or August. And so when they jump into the youth group in the new school year, for us it was August. I was hesitant of planning large scale missions opportunities in the fall only because of that reason.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a mission trip for youth ministries happen except for maybe spring break,
Yeah.
in the summertime, because you're right. It is super, super important and key to develop, uh, the community amongst the students before you can actually entrust that they will have not just the confidence, but even just the, um, capability,
Well, equipping,
or
right?
and
Like
equipping, yeah,
they need to
to
be
share the
equipped. Yeah,
gospel.
sure.
Yeah, I think just to tie this in a little bit, this is slightly tangent, right? But uh, even as last episode, we were talking about partnerships with other youth ministries. For sure, like when you start to talk to other youth pastors, or like, hey, what are you doing? Like, can you like share with me your calendar? And you realize like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Where you first start off with um, community building, and then you go into your winter retreat, and from your winter retreat maybe you go into a couple of service projects or more community building events, and then you go into your senior celebration, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's a summer mission trip. So having at least like a consistent flow, um and I mean, I would say I'm very blessed to have inherited a robust calendar that I just kind of edit as we go through our annual planning meetings. Um, but I'm just not sure how partnerships have been developed with different organizations or other ministries to be more missional beyond the locality. I'm going to be full disclosures. I'm not gifted in evangelism. I am not gifted or as oriented in the outreach focus. I will say that I'm more the discipleship and development oriented type person. And so maybe there's a youth pastor out there listening who is like, huh, I'm good at like worship and that's about it. I feel you too. I feel you too. Um, but I think just because we're not good at something, it doesn't mean that we're going to avoid it, because we still see it as important. And so that's why we do want to talk about missionality or being missional and creating those partnerships with other ministries or organizations.
We are thrilled to announce Rooted's new book with New Growth Press, The Jesus I Wish I Knew in High School, Asian American Edition. Being a teenager is itself an overwhelming experience, but the struggles unique to Asian American teenagers can often lead them to wonder if anyone truly knows what they're going through. In this book, 12 authors come alongside Asian American students to share their own high school experiences, helping students to see how Jesus makes a difference in our unique struggles. Jesus sees them and knows them fully. These testimonies of growing up Asian American include struggles with belonging, performance pressure, fear of failure, living in an honor-shame culture, eating disorders, sexual assault, and adoption. The writers now walk faithfully with Jesus in their ethnic and cultural distinctions. These stories lift up the Asian American experience with dignity, offering representation and belonging. We hope you'll read this book and share it with the Asian American teenagers in your home or church.
From there, can you guys share a little bit about what partnerships might actually exist in terms of missions, whether it be local or global, right? Like, what are trips that you guys have regularly been partaking in the past or currently, and what does that look like? What's that process? So maybe Justin, start with you. In a previous context or so, what has like missional partnerships looked like?
Yeah, so I think when I came in my first year, it was just what's the history of this church? What have they done, right? And so we were of a certain denomination, so we just kind of exhausted those. Unfortunately, I was able to kind of call a lot of the shots because there was probably a long gap between me and the last guy, and so I wanted to evaluate where our students were at that year so that I didn't just rerun the same program. Because I go, hey, sometimes we're used to running the same mission trip, but it doesn't have the same effect because our students are in a very different place, right? So I just go, hey, we've been doing construction type mission trips for like 10 years. And, sometimes some years we have to go, okay, is this the best use of our time and the discipleship? And then also, is this accomplishing the goals and objectives that our students need that year? Because maybe they don't need to do that. Maybe they need to do a VBS type of thing. And so those were just diagnostic questions. I wanted to be very careful of what I signed our kids up for before I even thought through the organization. For me, the process was then, okay, do I trust the vision and mission of the organization? And I think later on, I said, I don't want to partner with any org that doesn't empower the local church on the ground. If I'm just going in and out for a week or 2 weeks and the local church in that area is either being avoided or they're being hurt, then I don't want to do it. Because then it's about an Instagram trip, at least in my mind. Like, you go in, you take the pictures, you leave, and the next team comes in, does the same thing, same results, right? And so, there was a book that really kind of changed my entire trajectory of missions when it came to that.
What was that book?
It's When Helping Hurts.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I don't know if I agree with every single thing that's written in there, but I mean, as I was reading it, I'm just like, okay, I really need to think deeply about these type of trips, right? Especially when social media became big. Because I wanted to really protect the people on the ground, the church on the ground, and then our students when they came back. Because I said, if this doesn't help move our students in ministry forward, then I need to rethink about some stuff.
Yeah, in my context, we definitely had our slate of overseas missions trips, and we have a very faithful mission board that is active. They promote, they publicize, they raise money. So this is a very, I would say, stable ministry, at least a particular focus, sending people outward. But I think what I saw was missing, if you're thinking about youth ministry, it would be, how do you grow the hearts of the students so they have the desire to be sent and the equipping to know how they can grow and what they're supposed to do. So there needs to be a bridge built between an overseas trip where you got to go for 3 weeks and cross-cultural this and fundraising that. And it's like a big commitment to where you have your typical student who is just learning about his or her faith, what it means to be part of a church, what it means to know God. How do you build a bridge from one to the other? And I think that's the hat that I have put on to think about it. And so for us, we did decide to commit to a couple of ministry partnerships. The first was to be able to link up with a particular group of churches in my denomination too, that every summer goes out to Arizona and we go and serve and do, whether it's VBS or adult ministry or visitation or, kind of like labor stuff for Native American churches that are affiliated. So this became a trip that I brought into our church when I started here. And I have personal experience from this as well as a youth and growing up, becoming, a leader and so on and so forth, and a pastor. And so that became something that was brought into our church. And now that's something that's, a very regular rhythm of what students participate in, they train for, and they prepare their hearts for. But then even between that and your student that is, maybe really young or less mature or has no experience, we needed something that was more broadly local, just to teach and to demonstrate what it looks like to be missional. And so then a few years back, which maybe most churches, this is like, taken for granted, but we restarted a vacation Bible school in our church, not just for the sake of the students, but just for our entire church to kind of commit to again with an outward facing vision. And so then now our baseline would be, we want every student to volunteer in VBS. And it doesn't matter what you can do or how mature you are, we'll train and equip and place you accordingly. But for those that are more mature, then we want to send you, to the Native American trip in the summer. And if this is something that you have under your belt, then we'll consider, pushing you out maybe overseas or just a more, kind of a robust project. And all of this, through then the training and the shepherding is able to hopefully nurture those who have interest in the Holy Spirit's working in their hearts to continue to go out and to be a missionary in a formal way or just in an informal part-time kind of way. So that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
You guys both have mentioned how you have been rethinking like what existed in your ministry context, and you even sought to, I don't know if reform is the best way to put it, or just like reformat and insert new opportunities for students. And you're right. You're both right in that what a church has been doing historically might not have the same effectiveness in years down the line because the students change or the culture of the students change, and a construction or a compassion type ministry service mission trip might not bode well for kids who barely know how to use a ruler because everything is digital now, right? I think with that in mind too, like, are there local opportunities that exist in your locality that you can partner with, and have you been partnering with them? I might have missed that, but did you mention something like that, Justin?
I mean, there are. I mean, honestly, there's tons of stuff in the city, right, that you can do. It depends on, again, the age, maturity, and then where are people at in discipleship also.
True.
So, and again, I'm trying to be very cautious, and maybe that's a fault. I'm maybe too cautious at times. I just don't want to do something just to do it, or to be like, hey, my kid needs volunteer hours. Can we do a mission trip, right? And my natural tendency is to react. I'm just like, okay, that seems, but then sometimes I have to go, okay, well, maybe, is there something to it? Like, do we need to think through opportunities in the city? And so I would say you're placed in whatever city you're at, listener, for a reason, and every city has different needs. I'm in Houston. It's one of the largest sex trafficking cities in America. And so, I mean, we have one of the largest Chinatowns, and so that plays into it. And so part of this partnership idea with missional living is to understand even your city, right? And so we've been trying to kind of raise awareness. And what that does ultimately is to not only allow our students to understand, hey, there's a gospel need and necessity in our own backyards. Like literally, like for some of the kids, it's their own backyards. But then the question is, and hopefully they become so overwhelmed by what do we do? Then that's where the church comes in and go, hey, we have the answer, right? Not in terms of a solution to fix that necessarily, but we go, hey, we have a gospel that can understand, that can step into such dark spaces. And so how do we partner with local opportunities that is also trying to do the same work, but coming from a different angle? Obviously, the church would come in from a gospel understanding, but the city still wants darkness to be, alleviated. And so every city should have that. I would look at your city's website and your the local needs. So, I mean, there's food pantries, absolutely. You know, and or you know what we've been doing every spring is just basic stuff. So we created this thing called Project Serve,
Okay.
and we realized a lot of our trips, their overhead was like crazy. And so what we ended up doing was we bought 2 power washers with either fundraising or something. And then we just had a fund where people can donate into. And what we would do is during spring break, we would send 2, 3 kids to different houses of our church members, usually a widow or single parent or whatever. They would do their yard work, right? Which teaches them life skills, but then the overhead is really cheap. We just provide the labor. And what we would also do is we say, hey, we would also take care of your neighbor for you as well. And so then there's multiple layers of partnerships. And so there's just certain small practical things that people can do in terms of missional things as well.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, for us, I feel like sometimes what it takes is just like a connection. You're talking about locally, like our students, maybe it's the culture that they're in. They're usually pretty driven, to be involved in clubs and like volunteer and do all this stuff for hours, like normally for their schools. Sometimes a simple connect would just be, hey, you know what? Some of these things that you're doing for, I guess, your resume, they could actually be used for the glory of God. And you could actually use it to build relationships, get to know your neighbors, spend some time doing some hard, meaningful work, and be able to get the gospel in there as well. The Lord opens doors. So yeah, the local stuff, definitely, I feel like our students already have their handle on it. It's just they don't always use it, for disciple making. And so encouraging them in that is great.
You know what? I think, Terrence, though, I think for our students and maybe even our parents, local's harder than the bigger ones.
I was about to say.
Because I think what it does is there's more ownership involved in this. Because again, it's like, I'm going to see you tomorrow, or I'm eating lunch with you the next day.
Yeah.
And to share the gospel with somebody closer is so much harder than knowing that you'll never see person X again,
Yeah.
But
it's kind of
I
like
think
the irony of how
it is.
There's a greater, I guess, attraction to participating in an international mission trip.
Sure.
In one sense, because there is the unspoken or spoken glamour of going overseas. You have a passport, or you take a picture with a child and then you never see them again. But it just shows like, oh, wow, look at them. They went on a mission trip. That's kind of in the age of social media and kind of proliferating the fact that you did something that was out of the country. But on the other hand, like, how are we more willing to go overseas than we are to go to our backyard? And I think that's a tough point of reflection. That you're right, Justin, you said it, in that there's more accountability, there's more visibility. We would actually have to follow up, but in a sense, like, we don't want to. Maybe that's why sometimes it's just easier to do that one trip overseas than it is to actually go back to the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah. And for me, it's also when you're thinking about it, and maybe sometimes the international trips maybe it's like within every year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know. It really depends on your culture of the church, and then also where your students are at.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I learned this from another mentor of mine here in Houston. They had to, it was almost like a scaling process. Everyone does local. If you've done that, then you can do within the United States. And then if you do that, then you can go international, which I think there's value to.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kwame, and I have been serving in youth ministry at Centennial Church in Forest Lake, Minnesota for more than 20 years. I'm also the author of More to the Story, Deep Answers to Real Questions on Attraction, Identity, and Relationships. And I've had the honor to write Rooted's new curriculum on biblical sexuality. It's a 9-week short study that goes through key passages in Scripture about the topic of human sexuality. And our hope and prayer with it is that it would help students to see why their sexuality matters so much and how they can honor God with their bodies and their relationships. We also hope and pray that it is a tool for you as you navigate the tough questions that our students are asking with gospel truth.
When was the last international mission trip that you went on?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Took a group to Malaysia.
Whoa.
Some crazy stories about that one. Malaysia, Costa Rica. We've done a lot of Costa Rica trips.
Okay.
And the way that started was also pretty wild. Yeah,
Is
and
that still a
then
continuing thing?
no, it hasn't gone since COVID.
Oh,
There's a lot there's a
because
lot.
COVID was a disruptor for everyone. Yeah.
It was, yeah. And then, as you think about philosophy and just alignment and stuff, there's a lot. So
Hmm. Okay. How about you, Terrence? When was the last time that you went on an international?
International one, it's probably been about a decade or so.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so a lot more of my recent efforts have been trying to build out that bridge within our church to the Native American community. And so even the last few years, we've seen some encouraging developments because a new pastor came into that church and we sent a team to that church at the same time in terms of like the turnover of people and the changing of sites and stuff. So we've actually been trying to foster that relationship over the last few years. And so it's been good. So in everything we're doing, we're trying to push for, long-term view on this. And it's not just even for a 1 week trip like this, that it's not only seen as just like tourism or something that you add on to something that you do without the responsibility and the relationship that comes with it.
Hmm. I think there's just such a wide scope that could be understood about missional partnerships because it does range from for our students themselves in their own schools, amongst our own local churches. It's maybe to that food pantry or that um, shelter nearby, into the inner city tutoring organization, right? That's a very local scale. And those are actually some of the examples that I think of because I'm in the Washington, D.C. metro, and those are what exist. Same thing that could be said for many other large cities, including Houston and L.A. How would you encourage or advise some of our youth pastors who are listening who are and have yet to look for or establish long-term mission partnerships? Where would you direct them?
I mean, depending on who your church is affiliated with, I mean, for us, there's definitely denominational resources as well, whether locally or regionally or statewide or even nationally, internationally. So, for us, a lot of that aligns in that a lot of the money that we raise and donate and give away throughout the course of the year goes to support those denominational entities. And so sometimes we kind of overlook it and kind of go, well, that's those other people or, we don't know those people, but a lot of times the resources in terms of manpower and also training that they have is right in your backyard, especially if you're one of the larger cities. There's a lot that's available there. So I would start there if denominational opportunities exist. But beyond that, I do feel like many of our churches, innately, we probably have a lot of international or like cross-cultural missions connections already by virtue of us being in whether Asian American or immigrant churches. And so kind of starting somewhere and then, working it back to, what they have locally could be a good first place.
Yeah. Okay.
I think something that we might make it too difficult and it should be a little bit easier is just I think doing ministry for a while now, you have people who either start their own churches, that they're in certain levels of leadership at the church.
Okay.
Just asking what are the needs, especially if a church is in a difficult season.
Yeah.
Sometimes whether it's a retreat or it's like summer and you are working with a VBS, right? Like something like that. Just to be like, okay, hey, what do you need? And we'll raise the funds on our end. And then we'll come support you guys. We'll come in. We'll play second chair to what you guys are doing. But we're just gonna go. Hey, we're friends. We have the same alignments. But I got a couple of people here or a group of students here that will do a church partnership, and we'll come in. And you can make it a training aspect with it as well. It doesn't have to be as complicated as we sometimes make it out to be. You know, like hey, we could travel to Oklahoma or Wyoming or wherever, right? Where we know some people that you whether connect on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and just go, hey, what do you need? What can we do to help bless you guys for a weekend or something? Is it pulpit supply? Is it youth training for a season or a weekend? Like it could be pretty simple.
I think one of the things that I feel like we always have to be cognizant of communicating to our parents and to our leaders is that these trips in and themselves don't fix your kids or don't make them better, right? Like the actual hard work is what we do week in and week out of shepherding them, of teaching them, of helping them to grow. These trips are not the end all, as if, if they just go and have this experience, everything will change about them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, God can work in those ways, but I don't want these trips to be seen as internal outreach. Like these trips are not for those that just need an extra step in the church, to be sent out. Like, I feel like it's important that those we sent out are on a baseline level, qualified to be sent out for whatever it is that they're supposed to be there for, so that we are a blessing to the people we're working with and, serving, rather than they actually have to babysit us or we have to be there to solve our own problems.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Yeah, so that's important.
I think overall, just considering that mission trips are not just another trip for experience, it's like you should actually go because you feel compelled by the gospel and you want to share it.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I want to send Michael there because it'll make him grow up. And I was like,
Yeah.
you need to help.
That's not our job.
That's not the goal of the mission trip. I'm sorry, Mrs.
He needs to learn to clean the bathroom. He needs to learn how to cook. No, that's not what
He has a home for that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, like, all joking aside, right? Like, most opportunities that we may provide, like, not all of them will have the same outcomes or the same intentions and purposes. If anything, I think missional opportunities are ones that have such high potency, but they are also very purposeful. And if we just have anyone join the mission trip for the sake of filling a roster, like, then it kind of ceases to be missional for the sake of itself. And it's like we have to evangelize to our own students first.
And it perpetuates the whole babysitting culture
Yeah,
of churches.
It does. It
And
really does.
it complete counterintuitive.
Although it can, I'm just trying to empathize with every other youth pastor. It's like, but I have this pressure from parents that I have to just.
I know.
I get it.
Yeah.
A part of us wants to acquiesce, and it kind of feeds into the subtle people pleasing culture. But at the same time, like, I think about Paul and his missionary journeys, and at some point he had John Mark join him, and John Mark wasn't able to fulfill his responsibilities, and it caused a rift in their friendship and in their ministry partnership. Eventually there's restoration, but at the same time, it's like, if someone's not ready to step into those roles, then in some ways, it's not that we're trying to sabotage them, but we do need to be intentional to also guard them if they don't know how to guard themselves in those, in the immaturity that they may have. And sometimes it's one of those lessons that have to be learned, and it can be a hard one. But with the availability of needs that exist, I think just tying it all in, like, yes, we do need to ask, what are the needs and how can we meet them? But also, what are the resources that our churches have, and whether we are giving them or we are actively partaking in helping to bring about a certain outcome. It's knowing how to ask those good questions. As we wrap up our time, I do want to also give a word of encouragement for our hearers. So if you could give a final say of what is one thing that has helped you in your ministry to move towards becoming a culture that is more missional? What has been effective? So what has helped you in your ministry to become more missionally effective? I can start us off just in that having a missions department and a missions board is definitely effective, where the church prioritizes it to a point that there is a specific body that helps to prepare and connect with ministries and then make those opportunities available to the rest of the church, so that I myself, not just one person, am having to organize all these trips. And I feel for some of those smaller churches who may have 1 to 4 staff, and the youth pastor is responsible for coming up with every single piece of programming and trips and partnership, and that's really just exhausting.
Yeah.
So my word of encouragement and advice is, if possible, have your church or those who are in charge of missions work with them directly, rather than you having to do everything on your own organically. But how can we share the load where people are active and wanting to help, but they just don't know how to help?
Yeah.
How about you, Justin?
I would say in your relationships, just be mindful as you continue to grow partnerships with other pastors and leaders and friends around the world. A lot of your ministry and your partnerships and missions is going to come from that, actually. I know a lot of times it'll come from planning and programming for the year, but where the real needs are going to come from are from your personal relationships. And so, I think I've taken more mission trips with friends with pastors than actual, organizations sometimes. And so just be sensitive. I think as the Lord is growing you and sanctifying you and allowing you to have the blessings of developing friendships and pastoral ministry, just be cognizant of where the needs are. They're not just friends just to have friends, but sometimes they'll have seasons of need, and maybe the timing will be exactly what the Lord has planned, and you can be a blessing for them, church.
Yeah, my encouragement would be to take ownership of these opportunities. I know that you can't do everything, but if there's the opportunity to be able to go with your students or go with your parents or go with your youth counselors on a missions trip so that you could make these memories with them, that's totally worth it. There's something that you would express very clearly and tangibly by your words and actions and your commitment to them that would show them that this matters. But then also, you really, in serving with them in these contexts, you're able to really get to know them in ways that is different than weekly ministries or home visitations or getting coffee. Like, you're going to be spending days and days and days with each other through the thick and thin of things, and that's really wonderful. It's really precious. So even some of my more recent trips and going with whether it's my peers or even people that are younger, to students especially, now they come back and they have a different relationship with me, and it's more than anything I could have ever earned or expected just from preaching or teaching or leading them in a program setting, is just being able to live life with them. So if at all possible, especially if you guys are kind of starting off something new, be a part of that newness, join them in this frontier, and you'll be surprised at how God is going to really use that to really make this special and memorable for your church.
Absolutely. Well, that is definitely a good word. And if you haven't figured it out by now, listeners, relationships are super key and important. And honestly, ministry is about relationships. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're not here to advise you as to any formulaic options of what ministry could be, but really, just as much as we have become good friends over time and serving together, we want you to be able to find and thrive and flourish in those relationships around you, both personally and within ministry. Well, with that, thank you so much for listening today to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable podcast. We are glad that you could join us and look forward to the next time that we get to chat. Till then, may the Lord bless and keep you as we trust in the life and the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our cities, our homes, and our churches. You can follow us in this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. Talk with you soon. Until next time. Bye-bye.
You know what this reminds me of, though, Dorothy? I appreciate our relationship on this call. It reminds us as if we were starting a bobsled team, and we're that close.
Cool runnings and cool closings. All right.
See you guys.